Competing Values Framework is an organizational assessment. It is a 2x2 matrix, as most of these are. It's used to take a look at the internal culture of an organization. So it's divided into 4 quadrants that take a look at the internal values that drive your people, your processes, your programs. And so the 4 quadrants are the control quadrant, which is the red quadrant. It's all about process and hierarchy, and that's at odds with the green quadrant, which is about innovation and creation and flexibility. You have the blue quadrant, which is the compete quadrant, which is all about crushing the competition and being goal-oriented and profitability, which is at odds with the yellow quadrant, which is about your people and consensus and collaboration. The idea being that you can't, given finite resources, you can't push in all directions at one time, right? So you can't say, we're going to lock everything down and be super process-oriented, but we're also going to be really flexible and try new things, and there's a tension there, so you have to contract in the process side if you want to try new things, and it's about finding that balance, right? And this is a snapshot, so this should never be a stagnant state. You should never say, we're always going to look like X.
There are 2 reasons that we found it to be an interesting concept, but also useful for our own conversations. One is, it helps you talk about your culture. It's an explicit way of talking about your culture. And as a lot of professors have said, culture eats strategy. So whenever you're thinking about change or being more competitive or changing an aspect of your operations, you have to address your culture. The second thing is that both the yellow quadrant, which is the sort of collegial, friendly, we all love each other kind of quadrant, and the red quadrant, what they have in common is they're internal looking, those 2 characteristics. Innovation and competitiveness are more external looking. And so there's a kind of energy that you have to take into account if you're going to bring about a change. And thinking about those 2, balancing those 2 internal and external perspectives on our work was really interesting for us. We had great conversations around it.
The process itself is there are 2, you take a snapshot of where you are now and where you want to be. And the idea being that you start a conversation within the organization about what those values are and what do you need to get to where you want to go. It can be a blunt instrument. It is designed by business school folks who are looking at businesses and profit and all of that. But as with any of these tools, the goal is to start a conversation, right? It's only as useful as the conversation that starts.
One of the things that came out of these conversations that was particularly interesting to me as a leader, but I think was even more importantly useful to us as we do our business planning, is that we all agreed on where we are. I mean, with a really extraordinary degree of unanimity, we agreed on where we are. We had slightly differing views about the rate at which we'd like to be slightly different, but there wasn't a sense of, well, we're completely a yellow organization and we want to be completely a blue organization. There was a sense that we want to move gradually in another direction. One of the challenges with an organization like NAS is that we are a very tight-knit team. And with larger businesses or with different kinds of businesses, what you're trying to do is to have people agree with one another. What we're always trying to do is to give dissenting voices as much room as possible, because we do have a culture that is that's pretty strong, and we do all tend to look at things in kind of the same way.
I think another part of that is because we're such a collaborative group, right? We work across, there are very few silos in our organization, if any. So that, I think, also is one of the reasons why we ended up with such unanimity and knowledge of where we were. I think where you find more disagreement is when in large organizations,
right,
more bureaucratic or more siloed organizations, where someone is solely focused on the process part of the business or solely focused on, the marketing, and so you're all about the goals and the competition. So with us, since we work, any of us on any given day might be doing, process work, marketing work,
right,
program work. So it fosters that kind of a, we all are on the same page.
I thought it was a very, very good tool for giving people the space to say, I wish that things were a little more or a lot more like this, but also giving the leadership of the organization the opportunity to say, and let's talk about the trade-offs if we become more like that. And then when you're having those sorts of conversations, that really is distributive leadership, because you're giving everyone a chance to make a choice about the kind of environment they want to contribute to.
And I think the beauty of one of the beauties of this model is that it gave us the language, right? It gave us the understanding that there are these tensions. There's a great deal that happens that's very implicit, right, in many organizations. And the more you can make it explicit, the more, the easier anyone's job is in the organization, but certainly the leader's job, right? You don't have to then go in and wade through kind of all the nuance. You can just say, look, here are the trade-offs, as you know. Here's where we want to go. We all agree that, and here's how we get there.
And without encouraging jargon, which should be avoided at all costs in any situation, when you have a common language in an organization for the change that you're trying to make, it makes it neutral. It allows people to observe their own and other people's behavior without it being personalized or making anyone feel defensive. So if you can agree that we have this lexicon and we're going to use this for this period of time, it makes everyone feel just that bit more confident about saying, well, I don't think we're making progress, or I think we're making progress as a team. And that's always good. I think that with any of these tools, we have to be very careful not to get sloppy and imprecise in our thinking. Life and people are nuanced. Nothing is ever just one category, just one type, just one characteristic. If you begin to put things into pigeonholes that are too, neatly defined, then you can miss the kind of the richness of working together as a team and finding your own way through. We're very fortunate in that we're a small organization with relative financial security, so we can figure out our own way to do something and make that work. If you begin to work to formulas, that's much harder to do. It also becomes, I think, a less interesting place to work if it starts to look like a really big company, because the people who have chosen to work here have chosen not to work in a really big company for a range of reasons. So you want any workplace to maintain its individual flavor, its nuance, and you don't want to start working to a kind of formula of what we think we should look like.
And so I think there are also dangers in using this formula in the absence of conversation as well.
Yes.
People can easily see themselves in the different quadrants, right? Especially in larger organizations where there tend to be deeper silos. So, someone in the accounting department might see, I'm in the red quadrant. And when we start talking about moving out of the red quadrant, that can cause some anxiety for the people whose job is solely in the red. So I think there are definite challenges, but I think all of that can be overcome by a really good facilitated conversation.
Any tool, any conversation that gives an opportunity for candid self-reflection and that gives voice to more people in the organization is a good tool. And it almost doesn't matter what you do with it. If you are having conversations where people feel and know that they're being heard, if their interests are to advance the organization and they're being heard, it's a good tool. And it doesn't matter what it is. And I think what was most useful about this is that it gave everyone, regardless of when they had joined the organization, it gave everyone a chance to say, well, here's what I like about our culture, here's what I wish were different. And in a way, it was a chance for us all to get aligned on that and move forward, rather than have people who had been here longer, who perhaps understood the history and the positioning, just keep moving the culture along at their own pace. It gave us all a chance to say, this is our ownership of this organization. It was a good tool for that reason.